Now, I'd like to tell you about Steve and Julie's experience with clinical depression. Steve is a man who was one of my son's best childhood friends. He grew up around the corner from us, and he practically lived at our house, and I have loved him like another son since he was a kid. He came to me a few years ago in a state of absolute despair. He was terrified that his wife, Julie, was going to kill herself. Now, Steve and Julie were in their mid-30s when they married, and it was the first marriage for both of them, and all of their family and all of our friends were over the moon excited for them. They were the perfect couple. And then, a few months after the wedding, Julie's mother died suddenly from a brain aneurysm. Several months after that, her dog Poncho, who had been her most loyal companion for more than 10 years, escaped from their fenced backyard and he got hit by a car. Julie saw his dead body in the street when she was driving home from work one evening. And a few weeks later, Julie learned that she had to have a hysterectomy. Because of their age, they had been on the fence about having children, but learning that the choice was no longer theirs was the thing that pushed her over the edge. The night before Steve came to see me, Julie told him that when she was driving home from work, she had seriously considered driving off of a bridge or into the path of an oncoming semi. She said that when she looked into the future, all she could imagine was more sadness, more loss, and more pain. And she thought the only way to stop it was to end her life. When Steve told me about their conversation, he got very, very emotional, and he'd come to the conclusion that she wasn't happy with him. He thought maybe he was a failure as a husband, and that the only way she could think to get out of the marriage was to die. I hugged him really close, and I said, "This is not your fault or hers." I explained that the death of her mother, her dog, and learning that she couldn't have children were all sad and challenging events. Any one of them could have easily sparked an episode of reactionary depression. But as painful as they were ordinary life events, and they didn't add up to trauma that should ordinarily make someone want to stop living their lives. So I said, I am not a doctor, but I am 100% confident that she needs one because I believe she is suffering from clinical depression and she is in desperate need of medical care. I urged him to take charge and get help for Julie because I suspected that she might not be capable of helping herself. I suggested that he call and make an appointment with their physician and then that he drive her to the appointment and go in with her so he could help the doctor understand the seriousness of her situation. Like a lot of people who suffer from depression, Julie resisted getting help. Her parents had been members of the silent generation, and like them, she believed that depression was some kind of a personal failure, a weakness that she could overcome by adjusting her attitude. Well, Steve made the appointment, but when it came time to go, Julie refused to get in the car. So fortunately, Steve kept the appointment and he went by himself. When he described the situation, the doctor said, yes, it sounded like she was suffering from clinical depression. And then when Steve asked what he could do if she wouldn't seek help or take medication to get better, the doctor said, if you think she's a danger to herself or others, call the police. If she isn't a risk to herself or others, then you will have to decide whether or how long you can continue to live with her. Well, when Steve shared this with Julie, it scared her. She loved Steve, and she did not want their marriage to end. So finally, she agreed to get help. Now, it hasn't been easy, but with medication, therapy, and biofeedback, she is much, much better. They are both aware that she could have another major depressive episode at some point in the future. And they have agreed that if the symptoms reappear, he will call the doctor and she will agree to get whatever medical treatment is necessary for her to recover. Depression is a debilitating condition. If you or someone you care about experiences the symptoms of clinical depression for more than 2 weeks, please, please, please understand it is not their choice and it is not their fault. If they are not capable of seeking help for themselves, you may need to do that for them. It would be awesome if there was a one-size-fits-all cure for clinical depression. Unfortunately, there isn't. Sometimes people get lucky. The first medication my mother took worked for her. But more often than not, a person may need to try more than one medication and possibly other therapies before they find the right solution and the right balance. So if someone you know is having suicidal thoughts, call 988. That is the number for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, which provides 24/7 free and confidential support for people in distress. They can help you access prevention and crisis resources for you or for your loved one in the United States. Depression can be a long, lonely journey for the person who has it and for the people who love them. It's hard. But it is not an incurable or a terminal illness. There is treatment and recovery is possible. With support, people who live with clinical depression can maintain healthy, loving relationships with others. They can have successful careers, and they can believe in a plan for a future that is filled with promise and joy. And that's something for which we can all be very, very grateful.